Hi everybody, thanks for checking out John Mead Web Dev on YouTube, and make sure that you click the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of my videos. The focus of this video is to help you become more aware of ways that you can interact with the DOM in your applications. It's extremely beneficial to know how to use JavaScript to query information from the DOM, and today we're going to build a simple game in which we will track not only element sizing changes, but also user on-click cursor locations. We'll look at the getComputedStyle method that's on the Windows object, as well as client X and client Y properties on the event object. We'll also talk about how client X and client Y properties differ from screen X and screen Y properties on the event object. So let's talk about the application. Our end product will be this game called ClickFinder. It will include a gameplay space, this black area here, where the user will click or tap to try and locate predetermined, randomly generated coordinates. It will include a display box that appears at the coordinates of the click and will communicate to the user if they are closer to, which is warmer, or further away from, which is colder, the predetermined coordinates. We will also include a reset button so that the user can reset the game and play again without reloading the page. With this tutorial, I'll be using CodePen, so lots of the HTML boilerplate is taken care of for me. I did, however, import some Google fonts. I got Open Sans and Shadows into Light imported into the head via this link. Okay, so looking at our basic HTML structure, first we're going to make a container for everything to go in. So let's make a div with the ID of container. Within that div, we're going to have two direct children. The first one is going to be a div with the ID of click area, and that's going to be where the game is played. The second is a div with the ID of info area. That's where the title and the description and the reset button are going to live. So there's our two direct children, and then let's go back up into the click area, and we're going to put another div. This is going to be the box that displays if the user is warmer or colder to the coordinates. So I'm going to give it an ID of warm, cold box. And then down in the info area, we're going to add an h1 tag with the game name, ClickFinder. We'll add a paragraph with a description of the game. Click on the game area above and see how many clicks it takes to find the target area. And then we'll put our reset button, and I'm just going to give it the text of set new target. And that's all we need for our HTML at this point. Our CSS for this game is pretty simple. We're going to start by targeting the body, and we're just going to take away the margin that automatically gets put in. And then we're going to give it a background color, and I always default towards blues, so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to give it an RGBA of 42 red, 172 green, 241 blue, and 0.68 alpha. That's all for the body. So let's go on and target the container. All we're going to do with the container is give it a height of 90 VH. The only reason I'm doing this is because CodePen cuts off a little bit down at the bottom here. So in order for you to see the whole thing on CodePen, I'm giving it 90 instead of 100. Okay, so moving on to click area. And this is the area where the game is played. We're going to give it a position of relative. If you remember from the demo at the beginning, the box that displayed if the user was warmer or colder moved along with the cursor. So in order for us to do that, for us to use position absolute on that box, we need its parent to be positioned as well. So we're giving the parent a position of relative. Then we're going to give it a height of 70% of its parent container and a width of 80% the parent container. And then we'll center that by giving it a margin of auto. Next, we'll give it a background color of black so that it's high contrast. And we're going to use our first font here with the font family of shadows into light. And we're going to give it a size of 1.5 em and a color of white. So let's move on to the warm cold box, and this is that display box. So here we're going to give it the position of absolute so that we can move it around, and we're going to initialize it with a top at 0, left at 0, and that's all for that box. The last one we're going to target is the info area, and that's this piece down here. We're going to give it a height of the remaining 30% of the parent container. We are going to align the text with text align center, and we're going to give it a font family of Open Sans. And that's all we need to do for our CSS. Alright, so we know that we're going to need a couple different global variables within our code here. So let's go ahead and declare them. We know that we're going to need an x coordinate and a y coordinate that are predetermined. So let's call them target x and target y. And then we know that we're going to have to store the distance from the cursor click to the x and y coordinate so that we can compare it from click to click. So let's call that previous distance. Okay, so for our first function, let's write a function that determines what the temperature is. So it's going to measure the distance, and it's going to figure out if the cursor is warmer or colder. So if it's closer to the coordinate or further away. So we're going to start with function temperature, and it does need to accept one argument, and that is going to be the event object that's passed in from the click, and we'll set that up in just a little while. So how are we going to measure the distance? Well, the easiest way I can think of is to use the Pythagorean Theorem, and that is a way to find different pieces of a triangle. So the horizontal distance squared plus the vertical distance squared equals the hypotenuse. So if you look over here, if our point on the graph is here, our xy coordinate is here, that's predetermined, and our cursor clicks over here, we can find the change in x and the change in y and use those to plug into the theorem and find the length of this hypotenuse. So we're going to do that by finding the change in x, change in y, or the absolute values of one subtracted from the other. So let's set that up for our x coordinates, and I'm going to call it abs x, so the absolute value of x. And we have to use the absolute value method on the math object. So that's going to be target x, which is the predetermined x coordinate, minus event client x. So here we're going to take this event object, this is that click, it's going to send an object with information about the click. And one of the pieces of information is client x, so it gives me that exact coordinate. Now the reason I'm not going to use screen x is because screen x gives me the coordinate in relation to the entire screen. If I use client X, it's going to give me the X coordinate in relation to just the element that I put the click listener on. Okay, so that's for our X coordinate. Let's set it up for the Y coordinate as well. Okay, now I already said what our formula was, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, so let's set that up. So let the current distance, this is going to be that hypotenuse, equal math square root, and we want the square root of the sum of abs x squared plus abs y squared. So that gives us the current distance. And then we also want to declare a variable called temperature, and this is going to be a string that gets passed into another function which is going to display what the current temperature of the click is. So let's initialize it to an empty string. Now we need to think about our logic. How are we going to tell if the temperature is warm, cold, or if it's just right? In this case, I don't think it's legitimate to ask the user to find the exact pixel that is stored in target X, target Y, because pixels are just so small to try and click on. So let's go ahead and put it down that if they click within 30 pixels of the target, then they've won the game. So we're going to use an if-else statement. If the current distance is less than 30, and that's going to be pixels, then our temperature equals you found me. Else if the current distance, so the current distance from the click to the target, is less than the previous distance, which is the click prior to the current click, then we're going to say you're warmer. Temperature warmer. In any other case, which would simply be if current distance is equal to or greater than previous distance, we're going to say the temperature is colder. Okay, so that's our logic for figuring out temperature. And then we want to make sure that previous distance is set to whatever the current distance was, so that for the next click we can compare it to the current distance. And then we want to pass on the temperature to the function that's going to handle the display. So we already know, well, you don't, I do, know that we're going to name the next function display result, because that's exactly what it's going to do. So we're going to pass in the temperature, and we're going to pass in the event object, and you'll see why in just a moment. Okay, so that is our function that takes care of figuring out what the temperature is. So since I referenced this display result, let's go ahead and write that function next. And remember, it takes the temperature and the event object. Okay, to display the result, we know that we need to grab the warm cold box. So let's store that in a variable. And I tend to use query selector. You could do select element by ID. And the reason that we store this in the variable is so that we don't have to type this huge string every time we want to access that element. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to position it wherever the cursor was positioned. So we're going to go back to our event object and see what the client Y and client X are again. So my warm cold box We're going to access the style, specifically the top style, and we want the top style to be equal to event client Y in pixels. Then we're going to do the exact same thing for style left. And the final thing is we want to pass whatever temperature is into the element. So warm cold box dot inner text equals temperature. And that's all we need for the display function. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to figure out how to initialize the game. How are we going to have the computer decide what target X and target Y are? And we need to initialize previous distance for the first click, so there's something to compare the first click against. In order to get our random target X and target Y, we're going to take advantage of the math random function. So let's set it up first for target X. And I'm going to put the math random function within math floor. And what that is going to do is round the number down to the nearest integer instead of giving me a decimal. So I've got my math floor set up, and then we put in math random, not round. And if you remember, the math random gives you a number between 0 and 1. So typically you would multiply it by whatever number you want to be the top end of your window. So if you were doing math random times 10, you would get an integer between 0 and 10. In this case, our game board is responsive. So we don't necessarily always know what the width of the game board is going to be, so we need to query the DOM to find that out. So my multiplier within math random is actually going to be document query selector, and I'm going to select the click area, and then on that click area I'm going to see what offset width is, and that's going to give me the offset in pixels. So I'm going to do the same thing with target Y, math random, and then as our multiplier, document query selector, click area, offset height. Okay. Then the next thing we want to initialize is previous distance, because we know on that first click we need something to compare it to. So let's put in for previous distance just some large number so that the first click is always closer. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to grab the warm cold box and make sure that when it's reset, when the game is reset, that box deletes its text and is no longer visible. So we're going to grab that box via document query selector. So remember, that's the warm cold box. And we're just going to set the inner text to an empty string. Okay. So that is almost all that we need for this game. Right now it will work, but there's one thing that we want to change with it. So first, let's get it working, and then we'll look at the change that we want to make. So in order to start this, we're going to need to initialize it on load. And then we need to activate this click. And we're going to go back to our HTML to do that. And in the click area, we are going to put an onClick property. And onClick, we are going to run temperature, and we're going to pass in the event, and that's the click event. Okay. And then while we're in there, let's go down to our button as well, right here. And we know that on click, we want to initiate the game. So let's do that. On click. And our function is initialize, so we'll put that in. We don't have to pass it anything. Okay, now our game should work. All right, it works. It's telling us in our first click that we're warmer, colder, warmer, colder, and eventually we'd get there. But the one thing that I want to fix is if I'm clicking right here, I want this warm cold box to display right here, because that's my visual reference for where I clicked last. And it should be, but it's being pushed over. So the reason it's being pushed over is because of this margin. And once again, our game is responsive, so we never quite know what that margin is going to be. So let's go back to our JavaScript, and we're going to write a quick function that will take care of that piece. Let's call that function find margin left. And in it, we are going to give a value to a variable called margin left. Now, I'd like to declare the variable up here so that it's globally accessible, because once we find out what it is, we're going to bring it down to our display result function, and we're going to subtract it from client X to move that box over. So how can we find this? Well, we're going to take advantage of a method that's on the window object. So let's access the window object, and the method is called getComputedStyle. And then that method takes as an argument the element that you want to look at. So let's select the element of click area. Okay, so there we've selected the element, and what is the property we want to look at? Margin left. Okay. Now, this is going to return a string, and it's going to be in pixels. So say it's returning the number 118, it's not going to be a number, it's going to say 118px as a string. We can't use that. We need to get rid of the px. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a slice. And we're going to slice it from the beginning to the last two pixels, or last two characters. And that's going to give us just the number. We know it's always going to return with the px at the end, so this is a safe way to do it. And then that's still a string, so let's wrap it in a number function. Alright, so now we've wrapped it in a number function. We should be getting a number returned to us now. So let's initialize this so that when the program runs or when the application is started, it finds the margin right away. Then we'll come down here to our client X, and we will subtract margin left. Now there's still one more thing we need to take into account, and that is another aspect of the responsiveness. So what if after the initialization of the game, after it started up for the first time, they resize? Well, we've taken that into account for the set new target, but we don't have anything that's calling this on resize. So we're just going to listen for that on the window. We're going to say window on resize. Call my function, find margin left. Okay? Alright, let's save that and let's see if we have the desired result. Doesn't look like I have anything coming up, so let's look at the developer tools and see what's going on. Uncaught reference, temperature is not defined, on click. All right, let's look at it. Temperature is there. On click, temperature event. Everything is looking right to me, so let me restart or reload this. Oh, here we go. Unexpected token. And let's make sure we have our parentheses right. All right. There we go. So I was missing a parenthesis, so it crashed everything. So once we fix that, we can see, yep, it's displaying the box right where I want it to for that visual reference. It's telling me if I'm warmer, 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 and I found it. And now I want to play a new game, so I'm going to set new target. It disappears, and we go again. And that's the game functioning the way that we want it to function. Thanks for checking out John Mead Web Dev on YouTube, and make sure that you click the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of my videos.